Last month at the COP23 climate talks in Bonn, Germany, world leaders from 200 countries met to tackle climate change. Though modest progress was made, climate change is still a major problem, and the U.S. government is doing less than ever to address it. In August, President Trump pledged to withdraw from the 2016 Paris Climate Agreement and has even called climate change a Chinese hoax to undermine American industry. His administration has announced a repeal of the 2015 Clean Power Plan, has proposed to reduce the calculation of the social cost of carbon, and has significantly altered the criteria for scientists to serve as advisors to the Environmental Protection Agency. This is Snack Break. I'm Aroop Mukharji, and here to discuss these policy changes and the steep environmental challenges facing our country is the 13th administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, and a woman who has served both Democratic and Republican administrations, Gina McCarthy. Gina, thank you so much for joining.
It's good to be here, Aroop.
So let's start off with Bonn. The American delegation was smaller than usual, sort of indicating a consistency with the Trump position that they're climate sort of skeptics. But I think there was one thing about Bonn that was very interesting to me. There was like the shadow delegation, this kind of unofficial American delegation that was there. Yeah. What was going on?
Well, I think there were two things that interested me. One is that, I think one of the most important things that we were trying to accomplish, we being people who care about climate change and want to take action, was to make sure that the rest of the world understood that even though Washington has divested and is sound asleep on these issues at best, right, that the rest of us are pretty wide awake. You know, we care about it, we see the science, we understand it, and we are taking action. And I think what the rest of the world doesn't always understand is that in the U.S. there's layers of government, and each layer has authority and in many ways responsibility. And in the United States, most of the environmental progress we've made has always been the grassroots up. So I think the most important message people were trying to give in Bonn was that the United States remains active. Yeah. So while the president may not be committed and is down the road of withdrawal, it's a long process. And in the meantime, lots of action is happening in the United States, and progress is going to continue to be made despite that inaction in D.C.
I mean, it was incredible. There was, and you mentioned these layers. There were official U.S. government representatives. There was the governor of California, Jerry Brown, was there. Former mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg, was there. There was Al Gore. I mean, these were the major celebrity kind of climate change folks. Are you seeing a confluence of these various elements of American society kind of coming together? Do you think that these elements are uniting in opposition to the Trump administration position?
I do think that the president today has taken such an extreme view that he's mobilized people instead of having the opposite effect. And so we are seeing now with the work that Bloomberg and Schwarzenegger are doing on the America's Pledge that you have numerous states and hundreds of mayors and more than 1,000 corporations that have made specific pledges to move forward on climate. And we want to reward that, and we want to provide continued incentive for the United States to maximize our ability to really capture the economic advantages that come to countries that lead on clean energy. I think that's the worst thing that President Trump is not understanding.
The economic advantages.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's because a lot of people are frustrated. They think that they call it the war on coal, as it's called, that we're ruining American jobs, that we're gutting American industries. Do you feel that that's a false choice? The choice between economic growth and environmental awareness and clean energy?
Well, I don't just feel it. There's clear evidence that you can actually move forward on environmental protection and public health without damaging the business community or our ability to grow economically. We've been doing that for decades. I mean, people want to live here not just because we have the best economy, but we have the best economy because people want to live here. They want clean air and they want clean water. And they don't want to deny the science that tells us that the climate is changing. And they also want to understand that, like every other national and international challenge, that we are up to it. that we're the ones that innovate. Aren't we supposed to be the economic leaders? So the one thing that I worry about right now is, in the absence of strong national leadership and investment of federal dollars in clean energy, that we might lose the opportunity to get to that next level of clean energy that is going to be necessary to get us to the goals that science tells us we have to achieve. We're doing fine now. Yeah. But I think we're ceding a lot of our opportunities to other countries, in particular to China, who is investing billions over just the next few years, recognizing that whoever wins in clean energy is going to be the strongest economy moving forward.
So Scott Pruitt was your successor, or is your, sorry, Scott Pruitt is your successor.
He is, yep.
As the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. He's done a lot recently. What worries you about his policies?
Well, you know, he's made a lot of announcements about rolling back different protections, public health protections that the Obama administration put in place. But I think what bothers me the most, well, I mean, there are many things to choose from for me, but I think his undermining the science is what, to me, is most problematic. You know, he has had, you know, taking action to try to eliminate real scientists from being advisors in the agency.
So this is curious. So he was changing the criteria, and what he said was it's called the Directive to Ensure Independence, Geographic Diversity, and Integrity in EPA scientific communities. And what he announced, I think it was in late October, was that scientists with any financial affiliation with the EPA, and if they've gotten grants to do projects from the EPA, they would be barred from serving on a federal EPA advisory panel. Were those panels very helpful for you while you were serving as administrator?
Well, they're congressionally required, and of course they're helpful. I mean, EPA is a science agency. Its job is to protect public health and the natural resources we rely on to live healthy.
So by him barring this exact precise scientist,
he is,
who would be helpful?
Yeah, he is really moving forward to take away the ability of the agency to act in a scientifically credible way.
Then who will serve on these panels?
Well, you know, what he said was it's really interesting, Aroop. We had all kinds of rules for people who serve on our panels because we've always been heavily criticized or analyzed in terms of whether we are actually paying attention to science. And the agency's been successful because we have done independent science. So if you're a scientist who's received a small amount or even a large amount of money from EPA, which turns into a small amount for most agencies because we don't have a lot, and you have expertise in an area, we want to utilize you not to work on the issues that you received a grant on, because then you wouldn't be independent, but to use your expertise to help the agency in other areas where your expertise is required. So it's always been independent. And we have industry experts as well, as long as they come in with independence. In other words, you don't have an economic interest in the outcome.
So this is something of a farce, the idea that there wasn't independence before, and now
exactly, but it even goes beyond that to be pretty unbelievable, because while he's excluding scientists who have ever received EPA funding of any kind from being able to participate in a peer review process, he's also opening up the door to say that industry folks who actually have a vested interest in the outcome of an issue that's under review can participate, as if you're paid by industry on an issue.
Really?
And that provides you, an opportunity to be an independent peer reviewer of the science.
I don't think I understand that. So he's actually saying that the scientists who receive grants are barred. However, industry folks in fossil fuel industries who do have a financial interest in the outcome of can actually be a part of these panels.
That's my understanding.
That's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it raises, obviously, real concerns. But, I think it's a very interesting and clever way to really make sure that the agency can't move forward until somebody fixes the way in which science is done, because we really can't rely on EPA at this point with those type of reviews to come up with credible science that's going to pass the court review process. It will just be an inability for the agency to move forward. And I think that in many ways is probably considered a success by this administration, since they don't seem to value what EPA does, and they've shown that in budget cuts and in all of the rhetoric they have about how we're hurting business without even looking at the public health benefits that we've provided.
There was another thing that I saw was that they were recalculating the social cost of carbon. A lot of how we judge how much carbon will impose on our future and how much it costs our society is this idea that is a ton of carbon costs X number of dollars, and it's something that they reduced it from $47 to $1 to $5 or something like that. Is a smart way.
Bargain basement prices.
Well, just kind of ridiculous. So I mean, it's a kind of clever way of them kind of saying, well, actually, it's not as big of a problem because we're changing the calculations and how we decide how costly this is.
Aroop, you're right. They have started to rethink the social cost of carbon process. One of the reasons to do that is because when EPA issues regulations like the Clean Power Plan, one of the things we're required to do is a cost-benefit analysis. And that weighs the cost of actually doing the regulation in financial terms against the cost of benefits to the public and to our environment as a result of the actions we take. And so if you minimize the value of reducing carbon in the way they're suggesting, it tends to skew the cost-benefit analysis in a way that doesn't reflect reality, but does give you another reason why you would deny things like the Clean Power Plan having value in being appropriate to move forward. But they haven't stopped even at carbon. Basically, when they've looked at our Clean Water Rule, they required the agency to not look at benefits to ecosystems, because they decided they didn't want to calculate it anymore. So they're not just looking at diminishing the ability for EPA to do things like regulate carbon pollution that fuels climate change. They're really trying to diminish our ability to protect really core public health values that the agency has invested in decades. And I'm not just saying that. Past Republican administrators who were at EPA are literally distressed by the way in which this administration seems to be backing away from the very mission that every administrator has sworn to uphold and to act on. And so it's pretty distressing right now.
Gina, we've got a really exciting treat for you today.
Oh, Lord.
And that's, if you wouldn't mind bringing over so I know that donuts are typically eaten with the hand, but on snack break we classy, so we've got some forks and knives. Now, I understand, so just to go around the circle here. So this is a maple bacon donut. That's a sea salt bourbon caramel donut, Belgian dark chocolate, cider, and we have vegan
May I say,
cinnamon sugar holes in the middle.
Only in Cambridge.
Well, so this is from Union Square Donuts. I don't know if you've heard of. They are a fantastic institution. But you have a little story about donuts and growing up, and that actually makes this snack actually a little strange as a choice of mine that maybe I messed up here. What happened?
It's gonna be great. Well, I always tell people that donuts are not something that sort of I've ever been really enamored by, but I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. But it's because when I was a kid, my mom worked at a donut shop. And one of the things she very often did was wake me up at 4 in the morning to go and make donuts with her. And so it's never held that sort of appeal to me, because I was never a very happy camper at like 8 years old, having to get up in the morning and go make donuts. But these are intriguing enough that I think we should make the leap. What do you think?
That sounds great. Well, if you want toothpicks, we have these coffee things here, but
no, give me a fork. I will be an educated
consumer here. Thanks.
I'm going to try the vegan.
Go for it.
Would that be okay?
Join. No, would that be okay? It's for you. Yeah, I'll join. We're all good.
A little donut.
I don't really know what a vegan. So vegan. The funny thing about the word vegan is it in my mind, I think healthy. I think, it's vegan. It's going to be healthy. And I must confess, I wonder, do you think...
Is it sort of like jumbo
Let's
shrimp?
see, yeah.
A vegan donut hall. Oh my Lord. It's delicious.
That was great.
You know, it's interesting when I think vegan, I think not particularly appetizing. Now I know that there are many who are going to write in and say that's really, really wrong.
Especially from the EPA, former EPA administrator.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But I was wrong about that too.
Oh, that's delicious.
These taste delicious.
I mean, the bacon, the maple bacon is something Union Square is known for in the area. It's something strange, of course, which I haven't actually ever tried.
Should we?
It. Yeah, I mean, don't you think?
Wow, that really was delicious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. This requires more tools, i.e. fingers.
I might just go in one. I'm going to do it.
Oh my God.
That was legit.
It's delicious.
You like bacon?
I do. There's very few things I don't like.
Really?
For food. But it sort of reminds me of breakfast. When you're a kid, you like, maple syrup on your pancakes with a little bacon on the side.
Sounds great. Well, so here's something about food. Can I ask you a question about food?
Yeah.
Food's a part of climate change. And this has been, people have been talking about this for years, about this idea of like a water footprint. So beef has a water footprint of almost 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef, and vegetables might only be 100 or 200 pounds. So
and you made me eat that bacon?
No.
That's pork. Sorry.
Actually, pork is half. Actually, a quarter.
Oh, there you go.
A quarter of the water footprint. Well, so it's something that I've been curious about because food is such a personal decision.
It is, yeah.
To what extent can you tell somebody, in the interest of the environment, you should or should not do this? Or do you see a line there, or is that something that you see as, I'm going to eat what I get to eat, and that's a personal choice?
Well, I think every time, I've worked in public service for a long time, and every time you tell somebody that it's their behavior that needs to change, you're in very tenuous ground.
Yeah.
You tend to want to open up opportunities and then educate and inform and incent people to make decisions that are better, that are in their self-interest and in the interests of people as a whole.
Gotcha.
Because we're about, protecting the common good. That's what government does, not protecting individuals from themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think food may be one of the toughest issues that we are left with in the climate venue. And working with agriculture to get them to be part of the solution is going to be difficult.
So when you were administrator of the EPA, did you work a lot with the Department of Agriculture?
I did. We worked a lot with them on, we're responsible for looking at pesticides and other things, but I also worked with them on looking at how we could better understand the waters that needed to be protected and work with agriculture to ensure they could do their work, but do it in a way that was protecting drinking water systems. And it was very challenging. They EPA and agriculture tend to
they butt heads a little bit.
To butt heads a lot.
Yeah.
And it's sort of part of the dynamic. I wish I could have broken through that. I didn't.
Yeah.
But it made me realize just how difficult it's going to be to get agriculture to be really part of a climate solution. But in many ways, food is a cultural issue. And you can't go around asking people to change their culture.
Yeah.
You have to expect that to be a long and difficult process. Aroop, I learned this when I was dealing with issues at EPA. We were working with an international campaign to try to address cook stoves, primitive cook stoves. Really? I don't know if you're aware of this, but 2 out of 3 people in the world actually cook using these open burners.
Really?
These, they're fueled by, coal or dung or wood or, and they're trying to cook for their families on that. And they're a huge source of
carbon emissions, I would assume.
Well, carbon emissions, black carbon in particular, but also just public health damage. 4 million people every year are estimated to die as a result of exposures to the terrible pollution that is emitted using cook stoves. And it's mostly women and children. It's a really big problem. But to make that transformation, we don't just need to make cook stoves that are available and accessible and affordable for women and children across the globe, but you have to be able to cook the exact same food that they usually put on their table every day, or else you will not succeed.
Yeah, because it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Same thing as wanting to make sure that you respect their individual decisions.
Exactly.
But empower them to make healthier choices for the environment.
That's the issue.
Looks like we solved the problem.
Yeah.
Gina, thank you so much for joining. It's been an
It's great
absolute
to
pleasure.
be here, Aroop.
And thank you so much for joining. This has been Snack Break with Gina McCarthy, the 13th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under President Obama. I'm Aroop Mukharji, and to view more episodes of Snack Break, please visit our website at snackbreakshow.com.